with the COVID pandemic has been an ironical situation where we've seen a declining number of patients visiting hospitals, be it people who need their regular medications or be it people who have an emergency. People have been opting to delay seeking care. Now, when it comes to dental care, when it comes to oral health, it has suffered the same. Have you had a situation where you've had dental pain, but you've had to persevere till morning because of fear of curfew, or because you have feared probably getting the coronavirus while visiting hospitals? Well, we shall discuss this on Health Digest, just to know how you should maintain your oral health during this COVID pandemic period, and when and where to seek dental services should you need them, because there are dental emergencies during the COVID pandemic. This is Health Digest. I'm Dr. Mercy Korir, and we are joined by Dr. Linus Ndegwa. Dr. Ndegwa is the chairperson of the Kenya Dental Association. Daktari, welcome to the show. Now, we've seen a declining number of patients visiting health facilities. Is this the same with people seeking dental services?
Well, yes, we have definitely seen a decline, especially in hospitals where patients do not want to come in for the risk of fear of contracting the virus. So they have ended up using home remedies to treat their dental ailments. And now that we have had new guidelines in place, where we have said that any facility can open and see dental emergencies. We are seeing patients now coming back to private facilities to seek oral health care generally. Previously to that, when the first case of COVID was detected and we went into curfew, it was the ethical thing to do for us to close the clinics. So the Ministry of Health, in conjunction with the Kenya Dental Association, put out guidelines where we said that only facilities, and these are referral facilities that are ready to see dental emergencies, were open and able to see patients. And we had also put a definition of exactly what an emergency is. And at that time, it was bleeding, swelling, and any ulcer that is not healing, and also maybe trauma. But now the situation has changed a bit, because as you may understand, somebody who had pain 2 months ago would have been medicated at that time. So you would have prescribed to that patient an antibiotic and a painkiller to relieve the pain. But usually this lasts for about 14 days or so. So now that same symptom is not responding to medication, and now patients are coming into the facilities, dental clinics.
So the fear has always been that something that may look small and minute now may actually grow to be something bigger later, or may complicate. So what are these small dental issues that could be medicated? Let's say it's a small cavity that could turn into something more serious, and what are these serious complications that one may get arising from poor dental care or poor oral health care?
The most common problems we see are dental cavities and gum disease. So if I can begin with cavities, a small hole, so to speak, will become bigger, and you start feeling a bit of sensitivity, which is not prolonged, it's not persistent. But then as it gets deeper, now that's when you have persistent pain. And when that happens, your options are generally to you can save the tooth by having what we call a root canal done, or you can have that tooth extracted. Now, during these COVID times, the biggest risk for dentists and the staff is what we call aerosol generating procedures. And generally, this is when you use a drill to, in the process of placing a filling or doing a root canal. And so we all know that COVID is a droplet infection, and in the dental clinic, once you use the drill, that droplet becomes aerosolized and stays in the air. And that was generally the risk that we were trying to avoid as dental clinics. So root canal generally saves your tooth, and now we are saying that if the dentist is wearing proper PPEs, wearing the mask, the gown, the gloves, the head cap, they're able to perform these procedures safely so that that patient can be able to save the tooth. Another issue would be the mild gum disease. A patient may have deposits and generalized mild swelling around the gums, but if left untreated, now that situation becomes severe, and you end up getting persistent bleeding, a bit of swelling, abscess. And so what would have initially been sorted out with even small non-surgical procedures to deal with the gum disease can later turn out to head towards surgical process. So in this COVID time, this is the best time to maintain your oral health. Brushing, flossing is what we have been encouraging patients. The Kenya Dental Association has a hotline where patients can call in and seek some advice and also be directed as to where to go. So generally, so to speak, this time has created kind of a setback for dentists being able to see the patients and also patients coming in. So we are trying to now make that situation better.
We have this set of people who probably need more keen oral care, dental care, and yet they are at highest risk of contracting the coronavirus. These are people who have diabetes, for example, or people who are elderly. Can they still come for their routine checks? Because we know, like some people with diabetes, for example, if they get a wound, then it may take longer to heal. Can they continue with their regular dental checkups? Because this is part of maintaining their oral health.
Absolutely. So I'll just pick up from where you said that the diabetes. Generally, if you're able to maintain your sugars, keep your sugar levels low, then it's all about the healing process. So take, for example, if you had gum disease, if your sugars are uncontrolled, then that is when now the gum disease gets generally worse. And the same goes, with dental cavities. So we would give the same advice, although they are what you'd call a vulnerable group, would give the same advice in terms of good oral hygiene to make sure that they are maintaining their gums and teeth well. But in case they do get any symptoms that we have listed as an emergency, they should not wait and hope that that situation will get better, because generally they're vulnerable and they should come into the clinic. Another issue that we also have picked up is what we would call pre-malignant lesions or benign lesions, especially when it comes to oral cancer. It's all about, when it comes to oral cancer, it's all about the visual inspection of the pre-malignant lesion, let's say the ulcer. And if you're able to pick it up early enough, then it won't get worse later. So what I mean by pre-malignant lesion is an ulcer in the mouth that is not healing, or a white, a discolored, a white ulcer on the surface of either the tongue. Most likely we see it at the bottom of the tongue or the cheeks. And then obviously the risk population are smokers and high consumers of alcohol. So in patients such as those, they should not wait. They should go to their facility where, screening will take place. The travel history will be taken way before they get to the clinic. And again, we also leverage on telephone consultations. You would call into the clinic and book your appointment such that you're not seated there, crowded in the waiting room. And then the usual temperature checks, make sure you wear a mask. But yes, they should not fear to come into the clinic.
So how safe are people coming into the clinic? You've talked about making an appointment so that there's no crowding. But we've talked about this time and again since the coronavirus, that there's been a shortage of personal protective equipment. And looking at where you work as dentist, you're working in the oral cavity. So you're basically somewhere where the virus is likely to be highly concentrated. So how safe are patients who come in that, one, they'll not pick any infection from any of the dentists that are taking care of them, and if they have the infection themselves, they're not able to transfer it to the dentist or the people working in the dental clinic?
So these measures the guidelines that we have given out as an association, we have leveraged on scientific evidence and also guidelines given by WHO, CDC, Ministry of Health. So it's not very unique. We tend to leverage on the guidelines that are scientific based. So generally, for a patient, you would go through the screening before you come into the clinic. So the temperature check, the document, the history, travel history, and then the coughing and the sneezing. So if you find a patient has those symptoms, then they would not be coming into the clinic, and they would be isolated and refer to the 719 number, the call center, and ensure that that patient is there's a rapid response team that comes for that patient, because ideally that patient is not supposed to take themselves to a hospital. That somebody is supposed to come for them and do a COVID test for them. There has been debate as to whether we will be able to test patients before they come into the clinic. It's as you know, COVID is literally changing day to day. So testing would be a good idea, but we must assume that every patient is a potentially COVID patient, because as you are aware, this disease also presents as asymptomatic. So when the patient comes into the clinic, there is a guideline as to what the reception staff should wear as PPEs, and then the clinician should also wear. The main difference is what we call the N95 mask, as I was trying to explain earlier, because of the aerosol generating procedure. So the N95 mask will protect you from the aerosols that are generated during the procedure. So the dentist, the operator, will be donned in a face shield, the goggles, the N95 mask, the head cap, the gown, and that is replicated with the dental assistant as well. And then, the room we have what we call a high volume suction to ensure those aerosols do not spread out into the room. And then also, way before the patient, a procedure is done on the patient, they will also rinse with the antibacterial mouthwash rather, to reduce the viral count. Of course, there has been controversy as to whether this literally reduces the virus, but it helps a lot way before the procedure. And then thereafter, the room is disinfected, and that is the reason why we spread the patients in between appointments, to ensure that all instruments, all equipment have been disinfected way before you see the next patient. We have also employed the use of barriers where we touch surfaces, such that once all those items are used, then they are disposed. And please remember, these PPEs are single-use items. I know we have had a lot of challenges with quality and cost. It has gone up, but of course, safety for the patient and our staff is the main aim. So thereafter, the patient is discharged safely, and then we are able to see the next patient.
Does this cost of PPE that you have rightly said has gone up, and in some instances we've seen that some costs have even gone up 10 times, is this cost transferred to the patient now?
We sat down as an association and tried to do the actual cost of the PPEs. Thankfully, dentists were way ahead in this profession in terms of protection. So something like the surgical gown and the head cap, and the gloves and the masks, we were already wearing them. The only difference is the surgical mask now, we have had to employ the N95 mask. What would go for a packet of surgical masks, which were going for about 400 shillings 2-3 months ago, are currently market price almost up to 3,800, almost 4,000. We thank the government for allowing our local manufacturers to manufacture this PPE, and that's reducing the cost. But like I said before, we have had a real challenge with what is imported, the quality and the cost. So I would say it has gone up, and we costed it at about 8,000 per procedure. The CDC guidelines have rational use of PPEs in resource-limited settings, which we have gone through and are trying to use some of those modalities. But it is not the best. It is what I mean is like you can disinfect the gown, you can disinfect the N95 mask, or you can, use it, reuse some of these items. But ideally, these items should be single use. So if one procedure is costing about 8,000, and probably prior to that it was maybe 2,000 in total, that difference is now being borne either by the dentist or the patient. Some patients, when they see us dressed up like that, they do understand the safety measures that we are taking, and we actually pass the cost on to them. Obviously, the insurance is another discussion totally altogether. We have started the deliberations as to how we can cushion both the patient, the insurance, and ourselves from this increase in cost. But somebody has to pay for it, and that is the reality, because we are frontline workers. We have to treat the Mwananchi for these ailments that they're coming in with, and it will not stop even after COVID. So the message generally is for the dentist to ensure that they are seeing the patient safely. There will be definitely an increase in cost, and you will see it coming in future.
Thank you, Dr. Ari. Dr. Linus Ndegwa, the Kenya Dental Association's chairperson, talking to us about dental care, oral health during this COVID pandemic. Still look for your dentist if you need dental care. If you're in the high-risk groups, you still need your oral health care. Call in, find out if your dentist is still operating. As Dr. Ari said, the safety measures have been put in place to ensure that you are safe when you visit your dentist. Stay home, stay safe. Remember that it is people who move, not the virus that moves. This has been Health Digest. I'm Dr. Mercy Korir.